this is how far we reach in part 1 of this video. Let's actually continue showing some things that in my view are so special in QRadar. The one is that when the stuff is actually sent to QRadar, QRadar is not just one box, can be one box, but it actually works on a distributed architecture. And that is what has allowed QRadar to be successfully used by the largest telcos in the world, largest banks, and airlines. Almost every airline uses these. I mean, many large customers. And how can they actually benefit from this distributed architecture? Well, again, if you are a small customer, you can actually have an all-in-one where the console and all the different components are in one box. But if you start growing, what you can do is actually have an event processor that you can actually attach the logs directly to it, or you can actually have a dedicated remote box. Those boxes are called event collector. And every one of those event collector can actually work and have its own dedicated extra storage. And these are boxes called data store, which they don't require any licenses. All you need to do is put the OS and the hardware for it. And the beauty of this is that not only you can keep logs and data for longer time, but also when a search is performed, more on that later, it knows where the data is, and it knows how to use the CPU and memory for those boxes to speed up the actual search and allow that flow processor, that event processor, to correlate the rules and do the magic that I show you. Just a small example on part 1, right? So, but also on the networking side, on the flow processor, you can have a flow processor box, and these have sophisticated and very fast NAPA card that you can actually hook up to your network and actually extract not just the standard flows, but actually the full flows with the actual payload. One important thing to mention is that the same code that you see here in these appliances, these can be physical appliances, these can be virtual appliances, or these can be instances on the cloud. The same code base remains the same no matter where you deploy this. So in some cases, your cloud provider, they may offer you cheap storage and relatively cheap processing, but the minute you start exfiltrating data, you incur into aggregation charges. Well, you might want to put one of these flow processor or event processor on the cloud to make sure that that data doesn't go out. Only the data that is, once it's correlated, is actually sent to QRadar. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of the flexibility that you have to distribute all those boxes. And QRadar even has its own app. More on that later, where you get all these great apps to monitor all those appliances. In my case, I only have a console, a QNI for flows, and an app host for my app. So if I click in here, I can get all sort of details. And this is when I brought the machine down at night, and all sort of graphics and details on how your actual boxes are actually performing. So you can manage all those things in a very nice way. I don't want to give you the impression that QRadar can only get data from there, but it can also grab data from all the tools. Let's say that you have some elastic, log store somewhere let's say that you use Splunk for operations and you want to get some of that data into QRadar. You can do that, and there are apps and components and protocols designed to actually work with that as well. Now, once you get the data into QRadar and your offense being investigated with all that automation, there might be instances in which you want to, search that stored data and look for additional things. What else that guy that we saw in the previous offense has been doing, in this particular time frame, etc. Well, that is actually very easy. And we show a little bit of how you search in QRadar in the first part of this video, when we were showing those filters that you can actually add, and then you can select the particular thing that was parsed from the logs that you are searching upon, or you can actually go from here and say, well, do not show me anything that is from force point. I'm not interested in that, so I don't want to clog this. So select that filter and keep playing back, and then you are not going to see those there anymore. But also you can build that search in a more GUI with more features base. Let me actually go here and create a new search and show you what I mean. So here I can select what columns do I want to put in that view versus the standard one. And in here you select whatever custom property exists. So, you can say domain name, equals, does not equal, any of, and depends on the different type of custom property, you will have different operators that allows you to search for those as well. So it's very GUI, very easy to get the search that you want. But when you want to do things programmatically, or you want to do reports with polls, more on that later, which is a good way of actually showing great reports, great data in QRadar. You can actually do that by you will need to use a SQL variation that QRadar has called AQL, and that some people may get intimidated by it, but don't need to. So let's say you build your search in the GUI way, and you want to use it programmatically via API again or polls. All you need to do is select that search once you have saved it, and click here on Show AQL, and that will do that conversion from you. You probably don't need that very many columns, and you can eliminate all those as those are different columns. You can copy it to the clipboard and manipulate it accordingly. So no need to know AQL unless you want to. Again, you can search all you want in QRadar, but the main value is that in real time is going to be performing those correlation on the rules, and we are alerting you for things, because if you were to do it only on searches and you don't know what's attacking you, you don't know what to search, but those rules will. There's another important thing in QRadar I think makes it very special, is the threat intelligence. It not only can consume threat intels via stick and taxi, but it has a remarkable tool that makes things a lot easier. And this is the Threat Intelligence app. I have a dedicated videos for this app as well. And this is basically collections that the folks at the X-Force in IBM makes about bad things. For example, SSH brute force honeypot live. Well, they had found, wow, look at that number of IPs. And there are different IOCs that they found on their collection. You can actually search for a collection in here as well, right? You see, I was looking for Conti the other day. So once you get those IOCs, well, then how do I search those in QRadar? Do I need to copy paste with those, put it in a CSV file? How do I make that search? Well, all you need to do is click on the button, and the tool will perform that search for you. Well, searching for a week on those IOCs is taking a little longer. I click in this one and it came out immediately. And you can click here on View Result. These are only 44 IPs and 92 hashes. And here's the search in QRadar. Notice the magnitude of that AQL. Who's going to build that manually? Well, you don't have to. The tool did it for you already. So here are the results as I was expecting. I don't have any of that happening in my home network. And if I want to go back in time, some of the time, I can go back and do so. But this is what some also is known as the am I affected type of things. Is a good way of immediately search for threat data. That was a manual way. But also, the tool has a capability of automatically updating reference sets, and these are the name of my reference sets here, that works according with my rules, and it's actually syncing all that data. Notice the amount of IOCs are in there. It's really massive, and that stuff is actually being done automatically for me. So my rules will be up to date and ready to fire based on that IOC data. Another thing that is special about QRadar is that you can have multiple levels of separation with the same installation about what you're doing. So for example, if you have companies that that you acquire and the IPs conflict, no problem. QRadar can do that by virtue of the domains. But if you're going to go all the way, like we have some customer who buy QRadar licenses and they sell the service to multiple companies, keeping the data completely separated from one another. They have a master console which they can see all and manage the system, but no customer can see the data of any other one. Many MSSPs actually use the tool in that way. And as I mentioned before, all in the tool is API based. I have videos that show all that in detail, but that has made the integration of QRadar with other systems really a lot easier. So again, see the videos if you are interested into more. So we have seen some examples of the automation that QRadar can actually do. Let's review. We saw that AI in which Advisor did a whole bunch of research for me, but there's also some other things in the way of machine learning. One is the UBA tool, the User Behavior Analytics tool. Let me actually give you a glance of that one. And this is the dashboard, and this works with a set of rules. In fact, let me actually show you some of those rules. If I go here in the Use Case Manager app, that's a great way of looking for all the rules that QRadar has. I can click here on the UBA ones and apply that filter, and that's going to give me, I think that there are close to 200 rules, 186 in my system. And these are the things that have to do, these are not meant to fire offenses, these are meant to add risk to a user. When the amount of risk of that user surpasses a threshold, then an offense fires to invite you to investigate what is it that the guy was actually doing. But that's a standard UBA. But there's a machine learning component. I don't have it enabled in this demo system. And that has to do with, okay, I'm going to learn how everyone behaves for quite some period of time. And then I'm going to fire offenses when I see some anomalous behavior. So if this particular user touches 500 records of this app, but all of a sudden there are 5,000 records that are being touched by the same user, he has the access rights to do it. No offense is going to fire because he has the rights to do so. But the sheer amounts makes from the machine learning say, well, this guy is behaving differently. I want you to investigate that, suggest you to investigate that. And it could be that the guy became rogue, his credentials were compromised, whatever is the case. Like that is the machine learning. There are, I think there are 12 models of different components on the machine learning aspect of it. But there's another aspect of machine learning in QRadar, and that has to do with the network traffic analysis. Let me actually give you a glance of that one as well. Actually, it's not network traffic analysis, but network threat analytics, apparently the name to the app. So what we can see here is the objective of this tool is to find outliers. This is, there's so much traffic going in any network, even in my home network, that how do you find things that are not typical, that are normal? Well, the machine learning, in the same way that it works for the UBA, but obviously with very different algorithm, is actually performing the same type of analysis. And it's indicating, well, I see all these particular IPs that are not behaving in the way that they usually do, right? And that's an invitation for you to actually go and perform some searches on those IPs and figure out what is about them that makes an outlier. Again, all this technology, and this is the version 1 of the tool. I'm sure that it will come with better visualization in the future. But this type of tools can err on the side of false positiveness, if I may say that, because they can be sometimes noisy. But it's a good way of actually, nobody can analyze network traffic and network traffic behavior unless they have tools like this. Let's talk about the rules. Well, in QRadar, it's unlikely that you, at least in the beginning, will be creating your own rules. Most likely you will be modifying an existing one, tweaking one of there, and there's a tuning aspect of it on the Use Case Manager app. Videos for that as well. But if we go, this is what I call the rules well. In here there are 328 apps, and you can see, I can scroll here for a while and you can see a whole bunch of logos. Everybody wants to have something to integrate with QRadar. Some of these components are IBM, those in blue, but the other things, the other logos are things done by other companies. for integrating with QRadar. So, for example, if I don't have any Cortex, I don't even know what that is really, but if I don't have any Cortex in my environment, why should I want to have rules for Cortex, right? Apparently this is something with Palo Alto. So let's say I use Checkpoint. Well, I don't have Palo, I don't want to have this rule. So QRadar gives you a lean system, and you can actually add rules as you have the log sources for it. But you start seeing to understand what I'm trying to make, where a rules well is. This well is too deep. It's very hard to find anything when you have so many of these, and I haven't even gotten to half of it. So for that, you don't have to worry about it. For that, there is the Use Case Manager app. And because I'm running out of time, let me actually show you this and talk about MITRE at the same time. So let's say that I receive a mission from my upper management saying, well, we need to improve in the MITRE, and I want you to do better on the tactics of credential access. I'm just picking that up. I'm making that an example. So if I apply that filter in the Use Case Manager app, I'm basically telling QRadar, show me all the rules out of those 1045 that I have in my system that have to do with that particular tactic. And the system comes back and say, well, that 121 of them. And you can click on them and see the logic of it, and more on their videos that show the logic, the anatomy of a rule, show you all those details. But the important thing is that, well, this is what you can report to management. You see that there are better ways of doing it in a second on the tool. But if you are asked, well, find more. Well, do you want to go into that well and look in 300 and something apps and look one by one? No need to. What you need to do is scroll down here and say, well, show me all the apps, all the rules rather, that exist in other apps that I don't have installed. And you click here, and that those 121 becomes 142. Well, if you want to see just those that you don't have, you apply that second filter, include only the non-installed ones, and you can actually see them here, and you can analyze its logic, and as if they were installed. Obviously they are not enabled because you didn't even have them here, and you can go to the package, and if you have the Assistant app, which is one of those apps in the App Exchange that I show you, you can even install it with one click and add those rules to your system. QRadar really has embraced the MITRE framework, and the tool is filled with things that you can actually do. So, for example, if I want to see how am I doing in terms of your management asking, how are we doing in terms of MITRE coverage? Can you show me that? And by the way, anything that you have in here, you can do a screenshot, and or the tool can actually create the JPEG for you. And in here you have a matrix with blue. The darker the blue, the more rules and the more confidence you have on those rules. The darker the blue, the more things that you have. For example, on file and directory permission modification, you have 9 rules. And so you can see across the entire MITRE framework what you have, what you don't have. You can actually click here and see which of them are actually fired and you specify the time frame that you want. You can get coverage on the current and potential coverage per rule. You can even use the tool to say, well, I'm going to improve in this area and this is my plan. I mean, there are so many things. I don't want to spend all the time talking about MITRE and the Use Case Manager tool, but that's the power of QRadar, its rules and its adherence to the MITRE framework. Let's end this video talking about SOAR, right? So one thing is to find an incident, another one is resolving the incident, doing something about it. Well, let me show you what I mean. Let's take, for example, a phishing email like this one and send it to the SOAR platform. And I'll say that it's a phishing event. I am moved to my SOAR platform here, and here's that event that I just sent. I'm going to go quickly into it because you'll see that there are a bunch of things that are already happening, and you'll see some of these things are going to be crossed automatically. And what this is doing is working with the phishing. For example, one is to get the logs for phishing, and another one is dealing with it. So in here we see that this SOAR tool is actually extracting, getting to the Office 365 mail server by virtue of this API integration with it, and extracting the actual EML file. looking at URLs that are in there, looking at the header, IP addresses, etc. And it's actually taking more time to actually perform this action, but it's doing all these things for me. It's actually getting the intelligence about all those things, because I just saw the logs. I didn't actually see the email. Well, this tool does that. And then once, let's say that you validate, and this is a manual step, and you'll see why it's been put in here for a reason. Here's the explanation for what the guy should do to handle this particular event, to make sure that it's really a phishing event. And when he agrees that is such, he's going to manually say, yep, this is phishing. I'm sure about it. Well, once he does that, he manually completes that task. And then if we go back to the actual incident and look at the task, actually I should have go back, we'll see that additional tasks for part of the graphic workflow are actually created. Some remediation action I've taken it. So I'm going to get who else got that email. I'm going to ask QRadar from your Blue Code logs, who clicked on those links, who actually went, whether you had an offensive for it or not, who actually also went to that particular, those URLs. Blacklist those URLs in, Carbon Black, for example. Reset the password of those users, because I don't trust their credentials. If they went to that site, they need to have the password reset. I don't trust them. Open a ticket to have that machine. Well, actually, this is a ticket to get that proxy blocked, because let's say that the tool doesn't have, the guys that manage the proxy don't want any automation doing their things. Well, so be it. Open a ticket, you do it, and when you close the ticket, you will come in here. And then once this is actually completed, you'll see that there's another task that actually requests re-imaging those boxes as well. The actions, this is just an example of SOAR. One thing is to, again, detect some things with QRadar. Another thing is to have the automation for the resolution of those incidents. I'm going to leave it up to here. I think that this has given you my perspective on why I think that QRadar is so special.